Good evening, everyone. If I could have your attention, please. Welcome to our fiscal year FY24 budget conversation with our County Executive, Mark Elridge. I'm Peter Fosselman. I'm Director of Regional Services here in Bethesda. And again, I welcome you to coming this evening. We are joined by, of course, everyone here in the room, but we also have some folks online that will be joining us tonight, and I'll explain the rules in just a moment. But I want to recognize someone very special to our District 1, and that's County Council Member Andrew Friedson is here tonight. So thank you, Andrew, for joining us. This event is being recorded, and of course, it's televised. I want to thank our host, which of course is our Citizens Advisory Board, our CAB, and our Secretary, Mark Rittenberg, here tonight, who'll be speaking right after me. Our Chair, Kristen Nelson, is under the weather, so she couldn't join us tonight, but she sends her regards, and she's very much involved in the process. I also want to thank our Public Information Office, who has done an amazing job of doing all the budget forums and conversations. Our Technology and Enterprise and Business Solutions staff, as well as our Management and Budget staff, OMB, puts all the presentations together. And of course, my staff here at Regional Services. I want to specially recognize TJ Dant, who is our Urban District Manager, who's standing in the back, who handles everything that's Bethesda. And his best partner is Bethesda Partnership, who is here tonight out in the lobby with some information. Their Executive Director, Jeff Burton's here, and I want to thank Bob and all of Jeff's people for making Bethesda look fantastic all the time, 24/7. So thank you, Jeff. Look at the format this evening. As I said, we have folks both here, of course, and online. We have in-person questions. If you have a question this evening, a couple of us will be walking around. I'll be one of them with a microphone. I'll bring that to you if you could just raise your hand, because remember, it is recorded. So if you start speaking before I get there, then you're not going to be on the camera, or on the recording. So you need to wait for me to get there is the point. We have people, again, joining us virtually, but if you have a question and you're online, we have our folks from PIO here who will take those questions. If you could write them in the chat of the teams, then they will read them out loud, relay them to the executive or a particular staff member this evening, and your question will be heard and hopefully answered. Our program is an hour and a half this evening, so please be respectful of the time when you do ask a question. It's okay to talk a little bit and so forth, but try to remember that there may be some other people not only in the room but online that have some questions as well. We do have, do we have a sign-in sheet? No, okay. Failure on my part. We should have a sign-in sheet, so we do not, so I'll skip that line. I just want to note that we have a lot of people that sent in emails and some questions and asked some information that have been sent in ahead of time, so we'll be replying to them if they're online tonight or here this evening. You'll get a reply by email. And without further ado, I want to again introduce our Secretary of our Citizens Advisory Board is Mark Rittenberg. So thank you.
Hi, everybody. Mark Rittenberg, like you said, I'm with the Citizens Advisory Board for the Western area, which includes Bethesda. While we don't typically get too involved in making of the budgets, as a CAB, we did come up with 6 funding requests for the Bethesda Urban District, which is downtown Bethesda, and the front-facing part of that oftentimes is BUP. So it kind of has some BUP items in here. So the initiatives that we came up with for this funding request all partner with the County Executive's goal for greener county and effective sustainable government. The first request is a cost increase for Bethesda Urban Partnership. Costs have increased for BUP by 6.6% due to what we all know is runaway inflation. BUP's strong stewardship and service to the community has ensured that Bethesda has remained one of the state's preeminent urban districts. with a vibrant arts program, inclusive events, and engaging business opportunities. Bethesda is the economic engine for Montgomery County, so it's very important that BUP be given the funding that they need. The second funding request is electric circulator buses. Current buses are at the end of their life cycle and will be replaced in FY24. There's an opportunity to fund the purchase of 3 new electric buses for the Bethesda circulator, and this supports county goals for reducing emissions by 80% by 2027. Third request, recycling cans. We're requesting the purchase of 60 recycle cans to increase recycling rates in downtown Bethesda. Currently, only 40 recycling cans exist in downtown Bethesda, while there are 279 trash cans. We'd eventually like to work to the point where we have a recycling can next to every trash can. This will enable us to save money because BUP has agreed to absorb the labor costs and capital costs. Fourth is the rat-proof trash cans. We'd like to request funding to purchase 95 self-enclosed rat-proof trash cans to reduce public contact with rats around dining and gathering places. The fifth item is self-watering planters. We'd like to request funding to purchase 275 self-watering planters to reduce environmental resources and support climate change goals. Self-watering planters will let BUP move from daily watering to once a month schedule. And this initiative will provide 3 major advantages: less water use, less labor, and reduced emissions and traffic congestion by cutting the time that the watering truck is on the road. And the final item is this building that we're in, the BCC building renovations. The facility needs several upgrades, including carpet, paint, bathrooms, and kitchens. The interior is as it was when the building was built in the early 90s, including the carpet and furniture in most rooms. The chairs in this room were brought in for tonight because the BCC chairs have stains, are torn, and have cigarette burns, which tells you how old they are. And the exterior has rusting railings, broken elevators, dead landscape, and weeds. And that concludes our request for funding. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary. I have to be honest, he's leaving because he has tickets to a game, and he's stepping in for a tour this evening. Thank you, Mark, for making that time to of your schedule. Councilman Friesen, I know you have a lot of obligations this evening too, so we'll give you a free pass if you need to leave early as well. So I appreciate you showing up tonight, how busy you are. Next on our agenda is Thomas Tippett, who is here tonight from County Stat. He's going to be handling the whole presentation for OMB. So thank you for making it, Thomas.
Good evening. As mentioned, my name is Thomas Tippett from the Office of Management and Budget. It is my pleasure to participate in tonight's community conversation on Montgomery County FY24 operating budget. This evening's presentation can be viewed online. If you're joining us virtually, please follow the instructions on your screen to select the multilingual closed captioning. Before the county executive gives his remarks about our budget forum series, the county operating budget, and the current fiscal outlook. Purpose of the budget forum. The purpose of the budget forum is to give you the opportunity to provide input, ideas, and feedback to decision makers. This allows the county executive to hear the concerns within the community and thus inform decision-making process during the budget cycle. We are currently in budget season. The county executive is sponsoring 8 hybrid budget forums. This is the final one of the year, which is just one of the many ways that the community informs the budget. The budget is a long-form conversation and decision-making process. It's where priorities and policies meets resources and reality, and it's like nights like tonight along that inform those decisions along the way. So your participation and engagement throughout the process is both welcomed and greatly appreciated. Whether you're attending in person or virtually, we thank you for taking the time to participate in tonight's budget forum. Both the county executive and the Citizens Advisory Board appreciate you taking the time tonight to come. Understanding the budget. Montgomery County has two budgets, the capital and operating budget. The operating budget, which we'll primarily focus on tonight, covers things such as services and programs, education, public safety, and social services. The county's capital budget primarily focuses on investments in facilities and infrastructure. We can relate this to a homeowner's mortgage. The county borrows money to fund these projects via low interest financing, and we're only able to do this because of our exceptional credit score. As of January 2022, there are only 49 counties in the United States that have a AAA bond rating by the three major rating agencies, and Montgomery County is one of them. So that's something that we can hang our hat on. These capital projects include construction and maintenance of roads, buildings, including schools, libraries, rec centers, and police stations. So where can you view this budget information? Well, both are published and you can be found in your public library, but the easy way is to go to your preferred internet browser and just search for Montgomery County operating budget, Montgomery County capital budget, or Montgomery County open budget, and you'll find this nice portal where you can view department and agency budgets and spending, and you can view them across fiscal years. In the capital budget section, you're able to see maps of both current and planned projects in your community. Now let's look at the framework that goes into building the operating budget. Several key components go into the building blocks of the operating budget. The foundation is obviously revenue estimates. You can relate this to your household's own personal budget, right? You look at your monthly income and then you can plan spending accordingly. So once the county has established its estimated income that it will receive, the second step is to look at MCPS and Montgomery County student enrollment, because the state's maintenance of effort requirement mandates that the county has to maintain a level funding on a per pupil student base, on a per pupil basis year over year. Sorry. Thirdly, the county must also fund fixed costs like salaries, retirement, benefits, and future and current retiree benefits. The fourth element of the budget is to fund the debt service, as we just mentioned. We need to pay our mortgage as a county, and we have to plan accordingly for that. And finally, if there are any new federal or state laws or changes to laws that impact costs, the county also has to pay for those. So let's talk about process. The county's fiscal year begins July 1st and ends on June 30th. So while we are currently in December of 2022, we're actually in fiscal year 2023. A few weeks ago, departments and agencies began submitting budget proposals for FY24, and we want to make sure to all extents possible that we hear from you tonight and through other avenues, so that while the executive is reviewing these budget proposals, he has the concerns of the community in mind. In January, the county executive will begin making decisions about budget allocations, and he will submit his recommended budget to the county council no later than March 15th of 2023. In the spring, the county council will review the recommended budget. This is another part of the operating budget development process that involves the Montgomery County residents and community. The county council holds public hearings and work sessions that you may join and participate in. And the final budget action will be taken no later than June 1st of 2023 by the county council. So let's talk about ways that the community can participate in the budget development process. Along with your participation tonight, as you can see here, there are many ways to participate, including getting involved in your county's boards, committees, and commissions, where you can work part-time in areas of interest in county government. Another important way that you can take an active role in the budget and get involved in your community is to engage with one of the 5 regional community advisory boards. They help to keep you up to date and with issues within your community and allow your voice to be heard and align with others on critical issues. On the screen, you can see the websites of your CABs, and we highly recommend that you look into engage with them. So now for the fiscal outlook. The county focuses on financial sustainability. A balanced budget is required by law despite revenue volatility, and we are very aggressive in meeting a 10% reserve target each year. The county manages the rate and growth of debt expenditures, and we have a well-managed retirement obligations, pre-funding for pensions, and retiree health insurance, also known as other post-employment benefits, or OPEB. So let's look at the revenues. There are several components to the county's revenues that rose compared to FY22 estimates. Some of these revenues are quite volatile. For example, the county's recreation and transfer tax are closely tied with home values, and we all know that those have been volatile as of late. In the first half of 2021, home values in the county rose 32%, and since that peak have dropped by 15% as of July 2022 and have slid even further this fall. When we look at income tax revenue, which is strongly tied to the county's rate of unemployment and the economy at large, we've seen volatility. For example, in July 2019, the unemployment rate was 3.5%. In the pandemic, it rose up to 7.8% and has fallen back down to 3.7%. But if there's a recession, it's possible that our unemployment and economy at large would result in an increase in unemployment and a decline in tax revenue. A good piece of news is that the state announced in September that there was an FY22 unassigned surplus in state funds, and that will be distributed to the counties. And although that's a one-time, that won't be built into ongoing expenses, it's still good news for FY24. And a recent fiscal update estimates a tax-supported increase of 1.1% for FY24. Okay, so now let's look at how the county generates revenue. You can see on the screen, this is the FY23 approved revenues that make up the $6.4 billion operating budget for FY23. As you can see, in dark blue is our property tax, and in dark orange is our intergovernmental revenues. Most of this funding goes to our school system. 52% goes to our school system. The next slide is another visual representation of our FY23 approved expenditures by operating function. In other words, this donut represents how money is spent in the county. And as you can see again, MCPS makes up 46% of our expenditures, with the college right around 52%. And if you look at the dark orange down at the bottom, you can see that is our debt service. As we talked, that's us paying our mortgage each year, and that makes up 7% of our operating budget. And it would be the third largest department if we broke it out by expenditures by department. Our final chart looks at the expenditures and revenues a little bit differently. This is a breakdown of our FY23 budget by fixed and discretionary funding, with maintenance of effort, debt service, and OPEB that we talked about earlier. There's only about 30 to 32% of discretionary funding that we can fund social services, housing, transportation, and public safety with. So that's all for me, folks. Thank you so much for your attention tonight. I would now like to invite the County Executive, Mark Elridge, to the podium. Mr. Executive.
All right. How's everybody tonight? Good? Good. It's interesting. We're back live in session again, and our health officer today said people should consider wearing masks if they're going indoors. It's just, kind of the latest COVID update is that biggest concern now is we're like still in low in community, but in terms of transmission, we're in medium. At our hospitals, because there are three epidemics out there, flu, RSV, and COVID, are all happening at the same time. We're worried about hospital capacity. So far, they haven't crossed the line, but that's what everybody's worried about. The flu season is just beginning. If it gets much worse, they're expecting a further surge in COVID, which could send more people into the hospital. RSV seemed to taper a little bit in the last week. So the point of the masking, when you hear about it, is to make sure we get as few sick people as possible, so as few of you wind up in the hospital, putting pressure on the hospitals to be able to provide services to people. So we're not telling you it's the end of the world yet, but we're just saying we're trying to mitigate the damage that could be done for the hospitals, because they've got to deal with all three of these major illnesses. So there's an irony of being in person at the same day she issues this order, but it's fine. And I've been in person for a while, so it functions so far. I'm going to talk a little bit about the budget and then take questions from you all. Where do I want to begin? Oh, okay. I didn't see that. So, when we do the operating budgets, we put the budget through multiple lenses, both the operating budget and the capital lens, the capital budget. Everything through a racial equity lens, whether it's programming or whether it's capital projects. Where do the capital projects go? Who do they serve? And do they serve people in this community equitably? The most direct example that I can think of in my time on the council was when Ike Leggett became elected county executive. He did something that surprised people. He prioritized for recreation all of the historically black rec centers in Montgomery County, because they had been allowed to fall into pretty much complete disrepair. And meanwhile, the county was building brand new rec centers on the west side of the county. And Ike said, we're not going to do that. We've got to build these centers over there. And so he put a shift in funding that reflected, more even racial distribution of resources in the county. And the same thing can be said about investments in schools and other things. We need to make sure that everybody gets a piece of it, and everybody's, whether it's programs or facilities, are upgraded equitably across the county. So that's part of what we do. Our staff is being trained in how to do this. This is not an easy thing to do because they've never had to think about things like that before. So budgets are being taken down. They're being spread out over maps. They're looking at the quality, size of programs in different parts of the county to make sure that it is a more equitable process. Our staff is being trained in the whole concept of racial equity. Why do you think about it? Why does it matter? And so this is, again, it's a process that takes time, but we're third year into this now. We only still have 2 staff in that office, and we're hoping to grow it a little bit more. But we're training people in the departments to be able to do this work themselves. The second lens we put on things is the climate change lens. The county has probably the most aggressive goals in the country. 80% reduction in greenhouse gases by 27, 100% by 2035. There's a large chunk of that which is probably attainable. There's good reason to believe the transportation sector could be transformed that radically, that fast. Certainly new buildings will become greener. Existing buildings, the transition is often up to the residents. This is one thing I'm not going to return to it, I'll say it now. We cannot meet climate goals if the only people taking action to meet climate goals are the government. I can't tell you to put a solar roof on your house. I can't tell you to buy an electric car. But if you stay with the gas-fired furnace and you stay with the gas vehicle, then there is no chance that we will achieve the climate goals because it depends on reductions in greenhouse gas emissions by everybody. So we like to think of you as partners in this. We're putting money in to help the private sector make the transition from gas to electric in their buildings. We've got special funds that are going to be set aside to help particularly low-income apartment buildings do that without having to raise the rents so high they displace all their tenants. So we're conscious that we have to do things in a way that's sensitive to people's income. For our own purposes, the stuff we're doing is pretty exciting. We have the largest microgrid powering buses in the country. And we will have 71 buses in there when the next 2 shipments come in. And we're moving to basically have all our buses either electric, battery electric, or fuel cell, hydrogen fuel cells in the coming years. We have just received a federal grant for $14 million to build a hydrogen fueling station. And it's going to be innovative because it's actually going to be clean hydrogen because we're taking water and using solar power and using electricity from the solar power to break the water molecules. Water is H2O, 2 atoms of hydrogen, 1 atom of oxygen. To split that and generate the electrons that'll then that'll give us the electrons for a fuel cell. And it's totally clean. There are no dirty emissions that come out of this. So we're a pioneer in this. And if this works, we're going to be our buses, the fleet that does the longest run is going to be hydrogen powered because we can't get batteries to power a bus that far, and it takes too long to charge up a bus. We'd have to have 2 buses for all these long routes, and we can go with 1 hydrogen bus where we would need 2 electric buses. Those are the kind of things we're doing. Our buildings, new buildings, are net zero. We're retrofitting older buildings to become net zero, as close to it as we can get. So we're fully engaged. We're putting money out there to do this, and we're just going to help work with our citizens to help you make the same kind of transition that we're making. Personally, I drive an electric car. I put solar on my roof as much as my roof could put. I'm looking at swapping my remaining appliances for electric appliances. It's not something I have to do, but I feel like it's something I probably ought to do. So we're doing that. And finally, is community participation. We want to hear what you have to say about things. This is your budget at the end of the day. It's your county at the end of the day. So your input on where these resources should go is really important. One of the changes we made in this whole process is when I came into office, the previous administrations, this meeting was held after the budget was done. So they came out for community input after they'd already finished the budget. So we thought we should probably reverse that. So since I've been in office, we've been doing the community input on the front side of this process, not the back side of this process. It also means that when you ask me what's in the budget, my answer is, I don't know. We're still in the process of putting the budget together. And so we'll know more about that, but your community input will help shape what we do. I talked a little bit about the Racial Equity Social Justice Office already. This is a really important thing. Other people are beginning to do this. It will be the norm after a few years, but right now we're on the front edge of it, and it's probably a good thing for us. Environmental sustainability, I talked a little bit about this. We are a leader in these kind of things. We do things that nobody else is doing, and we're doing it for a reason. I met with 36 state delegates and senators yesterday, and we showed them the facility that we're putting in the hydrogen, and we had talked about the electric buses. There are a lot of small jurisdictions in the state of Maryland. I mean, we're huge, and then there's nobody close to us, and then they get really small after that, and they don't have the money to do some things that we're able to do, or they don't have the money to experiment. We can do a pilot program and see whether something works. They don't have the ability to do that. What we have the ability to do is show people it can be done, and that it can be done without breaking a budget. One of the points we made to the 36 delegates is that our investment in the grid, which could have been millions of dollars, involved zero county money. We did not have to make this a capital project and put your tax dollars into it. We were able to finance it another way. The school system found a way to replace diesel buses with electric buses, which cost twice as much for no more than they planned on spending on the diesel buses. So there are ways to do it, and our goal is to show other jurisdictions that we can actually do these things, you can do them too, and it's not going to break your budget. These are the projects that I came into wanting to do, and this is out of order probably what I'm going to say, but my first priority, when I ran last time, I knew we were going to run out of money. I knew it as a council member. We had an inkling that we were going to run into a deficit. And sure enough, 2 days after I was in office, they called me to a meeting where I was told, I think the first part was we're short $50 million or $46 million. By February, it had grown to $90 million. That was money I had to cut out of the budget that we were operating in going into June. So that was really painful. It also meant that the revenues for the following year, the budget we were going to write, had to be written down. So my first budget was a very conservative same services budget, and then COVID hit, and we had two same services budgets because we had no confidence in what the revenues would be. So we just hoped we could stay where we were, and we managed to do that. We achieved for the first time the 10% reserve target Montgomery County had. We were the first in the middle of COVID. We were conservative enough in how we managed things that we hit the 10% reserves. That made a big difference. But when I ran, I told people I'm not going to offer a Christmas tree. I'm not going to go around and put everybody's dream project on my list so I could sprinkle money everywhere, because I could sprinkle money everywhere and it wouldn't make any difference. I said, if we're going to have a limited amount of money, I want to put it into things that have major impacts on the community. And the first thing we put it into was early child care. I'm a former teacher, an elementary school teacher at one of the most impacted schools in the county. And early child care is a leveler. It is probably the only leveler that we have. Kids who enter school behind stay behind. Every school system in the country has been frustrated by the inability to close those gaps. If you can't perform on the level of the same students as your peers, it becomes very difficult to catch them up. It makes them more difficult to teach. My experience as a fifth grade teacher was, because our kids were everywhere from kindergarten level to fifth grade or sixth grade level in fifth grade, that you had to split your lessons into 3 parts. So in the old days, you had a 90-minute block for math. You taught a lesson for 90 minutes to the class. Nowadays, I teach 3 lessons in 90 minutes. You can't cover the same material. You cannot do the same depth. And the lessons are different at each grade level because some kids don't have the prerequisite skills to tackle the work that's in front of them. Some are way behind, like kindergarten and first grade level. Some are second and third grade levels, and some are on grade level maybe a year ahead. So the amount of time that a teacher gets to teach has been cut, and the day hasn't been extended. And if we want to be able to teach and move kids forward, it's incumbent on us to figure out how we start them on a level basis and then keep them on a level basis. Early childhood works. We added $5 million a year for the first 3 years. The last budget we added, I think it was 3 years. In the last budget we added $20 million. And the good thing about Wes Moore coming in is he said early childhood education is his priority. And he said it after the election, which counts more than saying it before the election, because he said that's what he was going to prioritize in his budget was early childhood. We are way ahead. Money they give us will be a big help. We know what to do with it. So I'm optimistic we're going to be able to act on that. The second one, it's not up on the slide up there in front, but it's on the back one we're saying anyway, is bus rapid transit. We know that without a decent transit system, we are dead in the water economically. And if you look at what differentiates us from the Northern Virginia counties, they built the Silver Line. We built nothing comparable to it. Nothing. Every Northern Virginia county has bus rapid transit in varying stages of development, but actually operating. It enables them to move people from where they live to work. And even though I proposed bus rapid transit in this county 14 years ago, We have not built a single proper bus rapid transit line. We have different financing structure than Virginia and a different tax structure than Virginia, and it has strangled us. We've also had no support from the state, which also strangled us. And without support from the state and adequate taxes, we couldn't go for federal money. Those things are changing. This budget, the one we were in right now, had the first money from the state. We're now ready to go to federal government for funding for these projects. We've advanced design on 3 lines that we can start funding them now. But this is where we're going, and it's going to be big. You know what we're talking about doing in White Flint. You all have an inkling of what this is. This is going to be huge. It will lead to a very large development up there. WMATA is getting ready. I talked to WMATA's people today. They're bringing in a team to market that area. It's going to get marketed as a life sciences place. We're going to build a legitimate life sciences center at White Flint. It's going to be anchored by a university research project, which the university says will make us the Silicon Valley of health research in the country. So we're poised to do something really big and important, but if we don't get the money for transportation, I can't get the workers that could fill 10 million square feet of office into those spaces if we don't have the transportation to do it. It's why I kept that stuff in my budget, but it's also why we're going to make a big push on the governor and the federal government now to fund it, because if the state wants us to be successful, they've got to help us be successful. So we're going to be going to them for money. Another priority is preserving and increasing affordable housing. We focused on eviction and homelessness prevention. I don't know if you know this, but in the middle of the pandemic, we built a 200-bed shelter that we had no intention of building. It was not in the budget, but we had put homeless people in 2 rec centers. And when we thought COVID was going to be over, not this summer, but the summer before, I asked my staff what happens to those people when the shelters close because they become rec centers. And they said, we put them back out on the street again. And I said, no. You know, it's one thing when you're dealing with a homelessness problem that you didn't create. But having housed people for 2 years, I was not going to put them back out on the street. So I told my staff to find the building. They did. They renovated between November of that year and March of this year. So it was like a 9-month project. And we have 200 people in there now. We could go up to 299. And that was a huge step in terms of getting the homeless population off the street. We only had 6 deaths in the homeless population in Montgomery County because we kept them in shelters. And it was big because they had a 1% positivity rate on testing. We didn't have a 1% positivity rate on testing. So we were able to do a good job keeping people safe. The shelter is an important thing that we've done. And it's, I think, emblematic of what the county can do when it wants to do it. But on affordable housing, because that's on everybody's mind, our policies are terrible. I'll be blunt about it. Montgomery County lives in the past. And we thump our chest about the moderately priced dwelling unit program. And how many people know that the program only serves people between $60,000 and $75,000 in income? So for the 50 or 60,000 households that make less than $50,000 in Montgomery County, we don't do anything for them. And if you come here not making more than $60,000 or $70,000, you're not going to find anything. And if you do get an MPDU, they're only 15% of the new market units. So if a developer builds, if in 1 year we get 2,000 units of construction, 300 are MPDUs. And we build nothing for people who make more than $75,000 and want to try to find housing. Up to, in Bethesda, if you made $100,000, you could not find a unit you can afford in Bethesda. You are not a poor person. You're not poor in Montgomery County standards. You're not poor in anybody's standards. But we do not require enough housing from developers. We don't require on the wide enough range. We're going to be proposing affordable housing from a 30% of median income, which is a little over $30,000, to $100,000 or a little over that, so we can fill those who below MPDU levels can't find housing, and also so people above MPDUs who can't find housing can find it. We're going to propose no net loss of housing. So you've got two projects on Battery Lane where the number of affordable units when the developers are finished building will be fewer than the affordable units there today. One project has 87 units today, all market affordable. They were approved for 400 units. We're getting 60 units. We will lose 27 units while the developer gains over 300 units. The other project, there are about 400 units over there. The developer is getting over 1,100 units. All 400 are more or less affordable today. When that project's done, I'll get between 170 and 220. This is what our housing policies are. This is what they do. They do not work. So if we want different outcomes, if we want people to be able to stay here, we need to do more than we're doing today. And so we're going to make a big priority convincing the council to do that. And we're going to ask for rent stabilization so we can tie rents to inflation so that people don't get displaced. You know, I saw it in Silver Spring. People seen it in Wheaton, neighborhoods that had reasonable prices. As soon as you fix it up, then the rents go up and the people are good. They're good enough to live there when it's not attractive. When you make it attractive, we displace them. We've got to figure another way to grow, develop, make things better without also at the same time making it harder for people to live here. That's one of our challenges. Building the bus rapid transit network I talked about, and fighting climate change I've talked about, so I won't go over them again. Public safety, reimagining public safety has been a big priority for us. We started on this before George Floyd. When I came into office, I had a large public meeting to discuss the state of public safety in Montgomery County. After that, the council accepted a proposal for a study of what we do in the police department. It turned out to be a really good study. It took them 2 years. They reviewed thousands of body-worn camera footages, because you don't know what people are doing until you look at it. And so we did that, and they were randomly pulled. They were not supplied to us. They spent time in the training academy looking at how officers are trained, and spent time talking to people, about both citizens and officers, about what the interactions are like on the street. And out of this came a very comprehensive report. We're going to be implementing the recommendations. We've been doing it as we go along. We haven't waited and said we'll do everything after the report's done. So we've begun the process of changing it. We're changing behavior when they stop somebody for a ticket, particularly equipment repair tickets. We're not letting them do things like ask you if you have a body in your trunk and can I get into your trunk? Little things like that, which only certain people ever get asked, and you can guess who those people are. So the training is going to alter the way we police to some degree, but we did not defund the police. We've maintained funding. We know we can't cut the number of officers. Crime levels are too high for people to be comfortable with that. But one thing we are doing is we're adding mental health teams. We added 3 last year. We're going to add more this year because 3 is not enough. Note to staff, because we know we've got to do a better job. We need people who can respond, for example, to homeless people in crisis who aren't police officers. It is not useful. They will not fix anything. They will get frustrated because those people will go to jail, maybe overnight, and be back on the street the next day. Nothing is accomplished. The worst thing about imprisoning people for minor, trivial stuff is with the prison record, you don't get to work. Somebody looks it up on your file. They say, do you have a criminal history? You've got a criminal history. Getting a job just became that much different. You go to rent an apartment. They ask you, do you have any criminal background? You say you've got a criminal background. You may not be able to rent an apartment. So we cannot box people into a situation where they can't re-enter into society. So our goal is to make sure we have enough of mental health response that we can begin to help people. We are also building a restoration center. It'll have, I think it's 20 beds and 25 sit-up chairs. So the officers can take people there and let them sober up, let them come down for whatever they're on, talk to a psychologist or therapist, and try to get them to agree to some kind of help rather than sending them through the jail door, where the outcomes are going to be bad no matter what you do. So we're looking at different ways to handle this problem, and I'm excited about being able to do this. Next. And I talked about economic growth and development. That you guys can probably guess that I'm a social liberal. This anybody who's confused, I can explain this to you later, but I am. And, so I believe that, we have a responsibility to raise people up in society to level, not just the playing field, but make sure people can play. If you start out behind, that can put you on the field, but you're going to not be very successful if you don't know how to play. So we've got to make sure that we can make this more inclusive. We make people more successful. The more successful more people are, the less money we spend on remediation. So I look at this, this is a good example of front-end spending beating back-end spending. You can not educate kids for a few years, and then they go off into the society, and then the rest of the time in society, you might be paying for it in the investment on the front end. I've always believed is the right place to make it, and so we're going to focus on doing that. But you need economic development to do it. So despite my reputation, I actually believe in economic development because that produces the tax revenue that lets us do the things in society that we need to do. So we're going to be very aggressive. We've been very aggressive for 4 years doing this. This is why you've got an exploding life sciences center here. We have put money into companies. One thing I've made sure of is the deals are all what I consider good deals, where the wages pencil out against the incentives we give people so that you're getting tax-paying jobs and good quality jobs coming into the county. We're opening an East County campus for Montgomery College because we haven't had one over there. That'll go along Route 29, and the university presence with the Center for Health Computing is going to help us draw graduate students and help us provide talent to the life sciences industry here. And we're looking at a facility in Silver Spring to teach people how to do biomanufacturing, teach them the skills that the industry tells us that people need. We open that thing up, we'll have the ability to provide another stream of people into those segments. We're working with Montgomery College to get them to train people for the major job openings we have right now. And I'm thinking social workers and teachers, where we have a terrible shortage of them. We have a terrible shortage of diverse people. We should be growing our own in this county, and so we're going to work with the college to grow our own. So that's sort of my general overview of all this. I'll say on the financials for this year, our income tax revenues are much, if you listen to the report, which I hope most of you didn't the other day, but if you did, those revenues are going to be revised within the next 3 weeks. The state told us for the second year in a row that the November distribution from the state of income taxes, which used to be the big one, is no longer the big one because they're so far behind that they couldn't get through the pile of tax returns. So they're going to give us the number in January, but they told us the number is significantly larger than the number we told the council we were going to have. We didn't say we were going to have it. We said, this is what the state says for now, but there's a lot more money out there. On the other side, I think it's recordation taxes and transfer taxes are down about 120 million. That is smaller than the amount the revenue is going to be up. So that's an offsetting news. But what it means is we can do same services. We will be pressed to do a lot more new initiatives, but we should be able to maintain the programming and stuff we put in place. And I know there's some nonprofit folks in here. Yes, I'm going to continue the hubs. Yes, I'll continue making sure there's money out there for food. That's one of the new realities of the county. After COVID, we realized the food needs in the county are far greater than we ever imagined. And so we're going to continue to make sure that all of you who do this work We've got a strong, healthy economy that's providing decent incomes and decent income taxes. And we've got the ability to manage the rest of where we need to go. And for the first time since I've been in office, including 12 years, well, first time I've been in office since Hogan, we've got a governor we can work with. And he's got values that match our values. So this is nice to be able to talk to somebody and not get yelled at for helping immigrants or something like that. So I think that there are good days ahead for the county, and I'm looking forward to it. So I'll take your questions. Anything you want, feel free. And who's got the mic?
Good evening, everybody. We can start with the Q&A portion of the presentation. Please raise your hand, and we will be alternating a little bit with the questions coming in from the virtual participants. The floor is yours now.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Elrich and everybody. My name is Pam Saucy, and I'm president of the Friends of the Library, Montgomery County.
I'm going to fund the libraries.
We and I just a request here. We and our friends on the library board work together to support our libraries and the needs of its patrons. Thank you for your determination to do something about children who show up to kindergarten already 2 years behind. It's been well documented that half of the entering kindergarten class right now is not ready. The good news is that the other half is. That happens in large part because parents and caregivers are making use of one of Montgomery County's most valuable resources, our public libraries. As we all know, public libraries encourage and support the thousands of parents and caregivers who read to their babies and toddlers, one of the most important drivers of early childhood literacy. MCPL conducts hundreds of children's programs every month and circulates over 3 million children's books a year. Our public library system makes early childhood literacy one of its top priorities in its strategic plan, aligning as well with the racial equity and social justice goals of Montgomery County. In your budget discussions and considerations, I ask that you support that plan that will allow Director Vassallo's team to make these programs accessible to every child across the county. That's all. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. You're right about the libraries. We've made it a priority. The barrier in the libraries over the last few years has been, well, last 2 years anyway, has been employment. You all were stunningly short of employees. We are addressing that, and the number of vacancies has drastically been reduced, and we're going to get it to the point you don't have them. I know it impacted programming because limited librarians meant you weren't doing the groups for the kids and things, so things will return.
Just want to remind our audience that Lauren and I are going to switch back and forth. She may have some online questions from some folks, so we'll be watching each other. So I'm not ignoring you, but I'm also looking at Lauren to allow some other people to participate.
Thank you. I'm Melissa Rubin, and want to thank Mark Elrich for creating the Animal Services Advisory Committee. It is an honor and a privilege to have this opportunity. The purpose of the committee is to advise the executive and the council on issues and recommendations around animal care and welfare. We have already determined and met that a priority for the advisory committee is to establish a spay and neuter clinic for the public. Section 5403 of the Montgomery Code mandates clinics to alter animals. Ideally, the county, through its shelter, would provide these services, but this time that is not possible. So there's currently a very large backlog of animals at the shelter waiting to be spayed and neutered, increasing their time in the shelter and delaying many animals from finding their forever home. Montgomery County Spay Neuter Initiative Program, MIC-SNP, was formed to establish and sustain a dedicated low to no cost spay neuter clinic for Montgomery County. The county could contract for those services with the nonprofit to provide an additional 2,000 to 3,000 low-cost to free spay neuter clinics a year. The proposal would reduce the number of stray animals, thereby reducing the number of animals entering the shelter. It would also reduce the number of animals entering the shelter neutered and spayed. This proposal would leverage nonprofit and county dollars and fulfills a legal mandate that has not been met to date. The proposal would focus on underserved communities, as you discussed earlier on, and we're asking for your support for this new proposal.
I'm going to support it.
Thank you.
That was easy.
Yeah.
For the record, of my 30 years in the county, I have 4 animals that are rescues from the county, and you all do an amazing job. Just so you know, I saw.
Thanks, Pete, for organizing this. This is just a terrific venue to talk. And Mark, thank you for all the fine work you're doing. I'm John Ross. I'm Executive Director of Nourishing Bethesda, here with Ann Dursey, a deacon at St. John's Norwood Church. We founded Nourishing Bethesda. We're feeding over 500 families now, and looking to grow. We're experiencing seeing a lot of demand on the ground. We're growing very fast. We want to offer some more services. We need more room to do what we do. So we would like to come to the county and ask for some support and some renovations and some other things that we have in mind to serve more people and to offer better services.
Yeah, so come on over. You know how to make requests, and
I do.
I know you do, and. But you also do a good job up there, and I think this is an example of reverse assumptions about a community, where you were serving people, and I will say some people thought that can't possibly be true in Bethesda. Who are they serving? And what they didn't realize is you have a workforce that comes here before any other option opens up where they live, and they go home whenever other options are closed. And so if they don't get it here at the lunch hour before they get on the bus, they don't get it. I got it. So you will
They're part of our community too. Yeah.
Yes. So, we're going to make sure we continue to provide services for this. And thank you very much for what you do. I've been out there a few times. It's very
We
impressive.
appreciate your support. Thank you.
Well, I'll take a question here, Mr. County Executive. Another request. This one coming in from the CEO, Glen Echo Park Partnership. I am speaking on behalf of the arts and culture nonprofit community who would like to request that the Arts and Humanities Council grants budget for grants be increased in line with inflation, which is at 7.7%, and that COVID recovery funds continue to be made available as supplemental support due to the lag in recovery post-COVID in our industry. Thank you for your past commitment to the arts and humanities, which has enabled us to continue to serve the public through the pandemic.
So I would like, and I hope we can maintain comparable funding that relates to inflation, because it's hard to ask people to do the same job for less, let alone more for less. And so we need to do that. And I feel pretty strongly about the nonprofit community because their wages are typically lower than anybody else's wages, and people do the job often motivated by a desire to do good. But doing good shouldn't mean you don't make enough money to meet your basic needs, or that you can't attract employees to do this work. So we'll continue to look at the amount of the increases so they can address some of these issues.
Hi, thank you. My name is Susan Kahn, and I'm a resident of Chevy Chase, and
Go ahead.
And I'm a supporter of the Montgomery County Coalition to Protect Neighborhoods. And I wanted to ask you if you're going to be funding an Office of the People's Council, if that will be in your budget. As a strong supporter of that, in particular because of the ZTA 1907 and 2201, which were unfortunately passed. I hope those will be also rescinded. And there seems to be no government entity taking responsibility for making sure that residents, especially in affordable housing buildings, are protected from high levels of cell antenna radiation that far exceed federal safety limits, especially at Park Ritchie and Tacoma Park. And I support Community Vision for Tacoma for asking for, and I want to know if you would have an independent audit to monitor the levels of radiation for the 34 plus antennas at the top of that building, which we know is one of the largest multifamily residential buildings in the county, and as well as having an oversight process for antennas that are put in the county that even lack permits, such as at Brickyard Road. So from high-income houses where there's no oversight over the permitting process for cell antennas to affordable housing where there's no oversight and monitoring of radiation levels. I'm wondering if you're willing to have some sort of independent audit
of that?
Look, my staff has been really deeply involved in that. We've been working with the community. We obviously did not support the legislation that went through the council regarding cell towers. Verizon's catching up. For those of you who have Verizon, they bought mid-band rather than, they went out and bought small band, and they went out and bought mid-band. Mid-band's what everybody's using to get 5G out to the community. Small cells have all kinds of problems with them that make them less than desirable, and Verizon found out the hard way. But we're working to make sure we can do that right. But on the tower committee, which has been, I will admit, a real problem, it's supposed to be public. It really doesn't act as a review board. It really doesn't act as what we envision as an oversight board. So that will be the next thing we tackle with a different set of regulations to make sure that they do that, and taking measurements and requiring real measurements instead of hypothetical estimates of what might happen. I prefer the real measurement method, and I know the tower in Tacoma Park very well. It'll be very interesting to see what actual readings show. Because they insist that it's safe.
Take one more question here in the room, and then we'll switch. Yes, sir. Your turn.
Thank you very much. So first of all, I'm a resident of Bethesda. I have, in 2014, I got my Solar City, 39 panels. I was very happy with that. In 2015, I bought my Nissan Leaf, and I was very happy with that. That's a very kind of good car. And then lately, I changed it because I changed a job, and I got my Chevy Bolt. I did not get any kind of incentives. I hope that the county or the state or whatever it is help with that, because I'm trying my best to be in that way. I mean, anyway, so that's my first part. My second part is about, I'm on behalf of MIAG, which is the Middle Eastern American Advisory Group, and we have a few questions for you. The first one is related to the affordable housing. We know we have a lot of communities here that are moving to this region. This region is not really very affordable. We had the Afghani first, and now we are hearing about a lot of Ukrainian trying or somehow planning to move to this area. Do we have any plan for that?
Nope.
Okay. Second question.
Let me elaborate on that. Look, we have emergency shelter, but we're not building housing for people who are coming here. The only housing that really gets built in the county is housing by developers, and they expect a return, as you can tell by the prices in Bethesda. We may look at building housing, but I will say I've got thousands of county residents who are already here who struggle with this, and I've got to make sure we deal with that. I can't promise you massive housing for people coming here.
Okay. Second question is the former White Flint Mall.
Yes.
Do we have any plan for that?
Yes, the developer. Yeah,
Okay.
well, I didn't say the mall. The developer actually does have a partner.
That's fine. The last question and third question is that in November you had a new law about anti-Semitism. I am Arab. There is Mr. Ben-Gvir in the Israeli government now who chanted death to Arabs. He will be defended by the new law, and myself.
He will not be defended by the new law. And if I were told what I thought about somebody who said that, I'd be very frank about what I think about it.
We'll take a question here from a virtual participant. I've been very pleased since moving to Montgomery County in 2021 to see the measures taken to make COVID-19 resources accessible to all. I've benefited personally from the free PCR tests on many occasions to help keep myself and my loved ones safe. Knowing that we are facing both a triple threat from COVID-19, flu, and RSV this year, and reduced federal funds for COVID-19 preventive measures, how does the county plan to proceed with budgeting and policies for testing and high-quality masks to keep these resources accessible to all residents?
So that's one of the things that we're discussing in the budget right now, how many tests we're going to buy and keep in inventory, what we're going to do with other supports regarding COVID. So we're still here. The federal money is drying up. We're hoping perhaps the feds consider that since this isn't over, they might want to continue to help us. But for the time being, we're looking at maintaining programs at the highest level we can, and we will.
Another question here from the audience.
Thank you, Laura.
Good evening. My name is Steve Riley, and I'm with Potomac Community Resources, and PCR is a small nonprofit in the county that promotes opportunities for individuals with intellectual and developmental differences to be included in all aspects of community life. I just want to say thank you on behalf of the nonprofit community for your support for programs and services for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. We really appreciate your support for PCR, and we ask that you continue to pay attention, as I'm sure you will. Thank you.
Yeah, it's personal for me because I've got a son who's in that category, and I get it.
Mr. Eldridge, thank you for being here, and I'm a member of the Climate Action Plan Coalition, representing 16 climate groups that are pushing to work with you to implement fully the Climate Action Plan that you published, and it's a great plan. So we were very impressed with the funding, additional funding you put in the FY23 budget, and we'd like to see that encouraged to increase that to further aggressively move on the Climate Action Plan goals. So in particular, we want to make sure that you will fund the money to provide contractor support to DEP to move forward on the Community Choice Energy Program, as well as to continue and grow the pilot program that you're putting in place now to further incentivize homes to electrify single-family homes and multifamily buildings. So thank you very much, and we hope you will continue your efforts in that regard.
So the $20 million that's going to go annually into the incentives for making the conversions, that money's is going to staying in the budget. It's got a nice dedicated source. Community Choice Energy, I was just on a phone call today with the Public Service Commission. Their staff is trying to put roadblocks in to the implementation of it and creating problems that are going to result in the delay of the implementation. And we can't implement it ourselves. The regs have to be written by the Public Service Commission. And while there are people there who want to do this, they have a problem with people who are basically trying to slow down our process, if not block our process. We will get there because the legislature is very clear about what they wrote, but until their behaviors are corrected, they're going to make the next few months difficult for us. But we are actively trying to figure out how do we get a solution to the problem. But thank you.
Mr. Eldridge, I came tonight to ask you for a pay increase.
Just remember, you got to support everybody's pay increase.
Good evening.
Hey.
Nice to see you, and thank you for this opportunity. I'm Kathy Hedge. I'm the Executive Director of the Parent Encouragement Program, PEP. We're a nonprofit organization. We've been in this county for 40 years, and I was really pleased to hear what you said about early childhood care and education, and the whole point that you can't invest everywhere, so you want to invest in those high leverage areas. We absolutely agree with that. And sometimes, though, there's a piece of the puzzle that people forget about, and that is that actually what research shows is that the highest leverage place for a child in those first early years is investing in their relationship with their parent or caregiver and the quality of their home environment. That is really one of the primary indicators of how well a child's going to do later in life, how successful they're going to be in school. And that's what our organization does. The other reason why investing in parenting support and parenting education is so important right now is we're, as you know, in the midst of probably the biggest mental health crisis among children that we've ever faced. Our organization, since the pandemic started, but certainly in the past year, we are getting so many calls from parents and caregivers who want help so that they can support their children's mental wellness. And we were very fortunate last year. We received a grant from the state of Maryland for $250,000 to develop a new program. We call it our Family Resiliency Program, and we're piloting it right now in the county. And we just finished our first pilot in the fall, our first parent cohort. We had 207 parents. It impacted 467 children. And I'll tell you, it just ended a week and a half ago, and we're getting parents who are saying, please continue these programs. This is one of the first times we've had this kind of an opportunity to talk with other parents about our children's mental health. And we're mainly serving totally parents that living in under-resourced areas, mainly parents who are Latino or other parents of color. Our programs are in English, Spanish, and Amharic. And we really would like to submit a proposal to the county to be able to expand this work because we know it's working, and we've got support right now from the state, but we don't have it for next year. So we're really hoping that the county would consider supporting this program to continue next year so that we can continue to provide not just mental support in a crisis mode, but really in a preventative mode, because that's the high leverage place for us to invest in. It's that preventative service and child wellness and resiliency. So thank you.
So Jenny, what is the window for submitting grant requests in this budget? Right.
One is contract grants, which usually goes within the department's budgets, and then there's going to be the grant projects. The grant process is going to be damped, and it's new this year. I think the vision is to have real ground entry points into the process. I don't know if that's yet been determined what those entry points are, but we can certainly do.
So you have a card, you should give her a card.
Okay, we'll take a couple of questions here from the virtual participants, and then we will continue with the live audience. A comment here from Lori Malman. Just wanted to say thank you to you, Mr. County Executive, for doing this. George Hernandez, what is your limiting principle on raising income or property taxes? In other words, why not increase these taxes in order to fund affordable housing and other needs?
So the county is capped by the state on income taxes, and the property tax requires the county council to support it, and raising taxes above a certain level requires a supermajority, not just a supermajority, but 11 members of the council to support it. So that has historically been a barrier that is very difficult to cross. I think there are some things that are worth spending tax money on. I think schools are an example of it. I think affordable housing is an example of it. I think people have to be assured this isn't going to put money into the general fund, or they're not going to create a false shortage in these departments so I can pour more money into the general fund and then support these things. But I think that's something the council is going to have to consider.
More questions from the audience here?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Victoria Villator. I'm a supervising attorney at Kids in Need of Defense, KINDS Baltimore office, and I'm also a resident of Montgomery County. Since 2009, KINDS Baltimore office has been providing free legal representation, pro bono mentoring, and coordinated social services for unaccompanied immigrant children who come to the United States alone. Montgomery County Council provides some of the few sources of funding that we rely on to provide legal representation to unaccompanied immigrant children in Montgomery County. but these children are not guaranteed attorneys in immigration court or in family court. Both places we go to help them gain legal status in the United States. Having an attorney often means the difference between a child's safety or return to danger. Data shows that immigration judges are almost 100 times more likely to grant legal relief to unaccompanied children with counsel than those without legal counsel. Kind applauds Montgomery County for being a leader in Maryland to establish our county's priorities, 6 years in for providing removal defense to unaccompanied children and helping them integrate into our community. We request that you continue to prioritize and provide funding for this work for the fiscal year 2024 budget, as it has already proven to help increase the provision and referral for quality, trauma-informed, culturally sensitive, and developmentally appropriate legal representation to children who are eligible for protection because of abuse, neglect, persecution, or other forms of violence. Renewed and increased funding is necessary to create quality, ethical, and sustainable removal defense program for unaccompanied children for 3 reasons. First, Maryland is consistently one of the top 3 states in the nation receiving most children released into the community, adjusted per capita, and Montgomery County remains one of the top 3 counties receiving these children in Maryland. Second, our county must train and sustain expert, multilingual attorneys specialized in working with children and knowledgeable in the particular legal aspects of representation of unaccompanied children in state and immigration court proceedings. Third, professional legal and ethical responsibilities of lawyers require them to work with these children for the duration of their cases, which current data shows is a median of 4.5 years. Therefore, multi-year contracts could help reflect a balance of these professional obligations and case realities. We are proud of Montgomery County's leadership in Maryland to welcome and protect these resilient children and youth. These are our children, they attend our schools, play in our parks, and are part of our community. Please support continued funding for these legal services in 2024.
If I supported it before, I'm going to continue to.
Good evening. My name is Thao Tran, Executive Director of Vietnamese American Services. Thank you for your support to our Vietnamese community. I'm coming here today to ask you for your support for our senior club. It's under our senior program. We bring a lot of food distribution during the COVID time. And we find out that a lot of mental health and socialized needs during COVID time and after COVID time for the seniors. And we gather more than 100 seniors, and we meet weekly. We would like to ask for a senior lunch program to reopen, because during the COVID time, that program closed. And we're waiting for FY23 to reopen, but we didn't have any funding for them to have a hot lunch. And right now, with the small budget, we struggle to have a staff to pay the rent for the room, but also pay for the lunch. And we go around to ask the local food bank to bring food to them. But I don't know when we will reopen the senior lunch nutrition program.
So give Pete get her card. You have a card, right? Or, okay. So we can contact you and we can find out what's going on with them. Did you have the money in the year before for lunch?
No, we just have the money to pay for staff and support senior group with other program. But for food, we don't.
You never had it?
We never.
Okay. Have you put in a grant request?
No, we
put in a grant request.
We talked with the senior lunch nutrition program, and with the HHS, they said that closed. The application is pending.
So you have an application in now?
The application is prepared and sent it to them, but they said that they do not have opened that program yet.
Okay, we can look into this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have a new Office of
grants management in the county. Raphael Murphy is the director, and I can connect you with him. There's a whole new application process, and it's a little bit faster than the typical contract and procurement process. So we'll get together if you could send me an email.
We will take a couple of comments from here. County Executive Elrich, I am a regular library user and was disappointed that expanded funding for the Spanish and Chinese language collections did not make it to the last budget to meet community need. I hope we will see those increases to enhance the Spanish and Chinese language collections in the next budget. This comes from Colleen Repetti.
We will see what the library submit in the next budget. Like I said, I haven't seen that yet.
Any questions over here? I have one more comment, and we're almost ready to wrap it up. You want me to read this comment?
Go ahead, Paul.
Okay, this one. My name is Christiana, and I thank you for your support of Montgomery College. Please continue to support MC and keep it affordable for students like me. Thank you for the Leggett Math and Science buildings. Students on the Tacoma Park Silver Spring campus are excited to have modern classrooms and labs. Please support the renovations of the Rockwell Campus Library, the Tacoma Park Silver Spring Library, and the Germantown Student Services building that will house the campus library. Students need access to quiet and group study spaces in between going to classes and going to jobs. We also need access to computers and to books. Many students can't afford textbooks or their own computers. Thank you again for your support of MC.
Good.
Okay, we'll take one last question.
Thank you. Mr. Eller. I too am a former educator. My name is Catherine Gagarovich. And I live in Bethesda. I don't have really a request. It's more of a question. Is the Battery Lane project going ahead, the redevelopment that you mentioned and the other one?
Sadly, it was approved by the planning board.
Okay.
Now, I will say HOC has bought some properties over there because they didn't want this to continue. So they're working with us. We're working with them to kind of limit how much damage gets done.
Right. Okay. Well, then that feeds into what I'm also concerned about a little closer to Montgomery Mall. When Marriott, we sent them 5 miles for $67 million plus. I saw those buildings there and I thought, gee, this would be wonderful for affordable housing. Silly me. I'm now getting slicks in the mail of 3 high-rises for seniors. If this is affordable housing, I congratulate you, but I have a feeling it's not.
It is not affordable housing. We are dealing with them and trying to get at least get a requirement for MPDUs in there so that there would be some units that are affordable. And it's a subject of debate about whether they're subject to that law or not.
Well, then, since I'm so close to this and also the Toll Brothers' lovely development on the WMAL field, where also there, how many affordable units? 30?
15% or whatever, 12.5% or whatever they're doing.
As a concerned citizen, I too am in the CAP Coalition and various environmental groups. I got no heads up on this. I mean, I think I'm fairly aware. How does this... My question as a common citizen is, how does this get approved? And that they're sending out slicks with drawings on them.
So the land acquisition you would never know about because they just marketed it, and it's the group that I think built Riderwood is the one that bought this property, and so they bought it, and then they submit a plan to Park and Planning, and then that's where I think problems begin because I'm not clear how much notification Park and Planning gave to anybody.
So did Marriott sell to Riderwood?
Mm-hmm. It wouldn't be the county, and we have no ability to block sales.
After taking millions of dollars?
Yep.
Okay, I do have one request. It's not from me. It's from Jim Driscoll, whom I think you know. He asked that in the Green New Deal, you increase the funding for social housing in the Housing Production Fund.
So we put a large increase into the fund last year. We're aiming to try to maintain it. we're looking at other ways of funding housing production other than traditional way. Most of what we do, we subsidize development so we can get affordable units out of traditional commercial developments. We are thinking of other ways to do things, and we're working with HOC about some alternative approaches to this, because we'll never get enough housing if all we get is 12.5 or 15% of what people build.
So what could the common concerned citizen do?
Stay tuned to the things we propose, because some of the stuff we propose, like no net loss of affordable housing, is going to be important. To your objectives, if we propose rent stabilization, it's going to be important. There are things we're going to be putting out there that start to tackle the affordable housing thing. If my budget has money for additional capital, make sure you're out there testifying in a public hearing saying this is the kind of investments we want to see the county make.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody, for participating. Mr. County Executive, one last comment. Thanks for giving us the opportunity to hear more about the budget and to hear from our residents. Hope pedestrian safety improvements continue to get a high priority in the budget.
I'm going to continue, the public safety improvements. When I came in, I looked across. I live in Tacoma Park, so it's almost across the street, but I could see what the district was doing with those small pylons to square corners and make crossings safer and to create pathways for people. And we weren't really doing that. And, people here were used to, like, what's a nice, expensive solution where I can use lots of concrete and build something? And I thought, how about pylons? They seem to work. So we've started doing a lot of that, and we're going to keep doing more of that. That's an easy way to square off corners, make sure the cars just can't swing around a curved corner. And we put up more hawk signals. We continue to put in, fixed things that help control traffic. We're doing lane narrowing where it works. So we're very much into this, and there are other ideas out there too.
Thank you, everybody, for participating. Any closing thought? And we're done, Mr. County Executive.
Yeah, just thank you all for coming out. This year, my 8th audience, and I really do appreciate people coming, asking questions. Even if you don't ask a question, just getting a little bit better informed about what we're doing. Many of you talk to your neighbors, and I've always known that what one neighbor tells another neighbor about what they've seen and heard often helps people learn about the county if they're not hearing it directly from us. And I don't know how many people clicked in at home, but being able to do these things virtually where my audience isn't limited to who drives into Bethesda or bikes into Bethesda is a really good thing. We'll keep doing this. Like I said, it's something we started doing differently. When I came in, we're going to keep this going. We may do some community meetings later in the year, which wouldn't be budget related, but might be more topical to the issues that concern people have. So my budget staff does not be alarmed. I will not ask you to come to these meetings. But I think going out and talking to people is really an effective way of getting you all engaged in what we're doing. So thank you all.
Inclusive su jefe fue testigo de una llamada telefónica donde la persona al otro lado de la línea pues estaba un poco alterada, se podía escuchar que gritaba,